Hello everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the movie Held. Now I recently watched this, it's come out recently, and I rented it at home basically. I'm not even sure if there's theaters open right now. The filming of this is during the COVID situation. So I'm not even sure if theaters are open, but regardless, we're going to do a review of it today. And now there's going to be a few different parts to this, and I'll have timestamps below so you can skip to that certain part if you want to. Now this first part I'm going to do is just some basic, there's not any spoilers, it's just a generic, this is what the movie's about, what did I think of it. Then I'm going to go into like a story time review where there's total spoiler alerts, and it will be obvious, there's going to be a thing that comes up and says, spoiler alert, and if you don't think you want to watch it but you want to hear me tell the story about it, then that part's for you. And then after that there will be like a final thoughts type situation, again spoiler free. So again, go ahead and check out the description if you want to skip to any of those parts. And other than that, let's begin this review. So again, the name of the movie is Held. It was released on April 9th 2021. Now this is a story about a couple who is having some marital problems, so they rent a little like Airbnb type situation to get away for their anniversary weekend and work on their marriage, but things go very wrong during this, and an all-speaking voice, all-knowing entity kind of takes over the house, and it's like fight or flight for this couple. So that is the quick little two-line synopsis. Obviously there's a twist in it, but we won't talk about that right now. Held was directed by Travis Cluff and Chris Ofing. Travis and Cliff both co-wrote and co-directed The Gallows, and they partnered up in 2011 and they formed a production company. The two main actors, the two main roles, Emma is going to be played by Jill Aubrey, and Henry is going to be played by Bart Johnson. Jill Aubrey is an actor, producer, and writer. She's obviously known for Held, as well as All That We Have Left, and she also wrote the script to this movie Held. Bart Johnson is also an actor. A lot of people are going to recognize him from High School Musical. He was in those roles, and so he's kind of a familiar face, if you will. Now again, Jill plays Emma Barrett, and Bart plays Henry Barrett. They are a married couple. They are having issues. They are going to be working on it during this weekend. As far as the actor's performance goes, I felt like it was good for what they had to work with, but also knowing that Jill wrote the script, I'm kind of like, Some of the movie feels forced, like the script, like it's really trying to push onto you these themes. And again, I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'll do it in the spoiler section. So there was that. So there was a little bit of like a, Hallmarky kind of vibe, but not Hallmarky in the cheesy way, but like in a horror movie way, if you will. But again, I felt overall that, I watched the whole film. So let's put it that way. Now, the cinematography of this film is pretty simple because it takes place basically in this home. Now, the house is very modern. Like, imagine renting an Airbnb in like an orange grove in the middle of nowhere. And it's very modern and very chic. It's that vibe. So that part of it's like, okay, cool. But there's only so much you can get creative with in this house. But I did feel like the director, the cinematographer, all these people, like they did a decent job with that, making it visually interesting throughout. Now, overall, I felt like what this movie was doing was serving us a watered down, more psychological thriller, less slasher version of Saw. And that's literally when it got into it, I was like, oh my God, we're watching a revamped Saw. So there was that. And again, if you've seen the Saw franchise, you know how that works. It's very, not slasher, but it's a horror film, but also has that kind of make you think type thing, at least the earlier parts did. So this movie is not that bloody. It's not that, horror filled and all that. So it did have that. There are small nuances along the way that clue in and allow the watcher to participate, I like to say, where you feel like, wait, I got that. It's not completely laying everything out, but there are some plot holes in it. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and navigate into the spoiler alert storytime section. So here we go. Now, the movie opens up, and what we're seeing is a young Emma, but we don't know it's Emma. And she's in a car, and she's like with her boyfriend, and they're with somebody else. And basically they go, she's drinking a beer, they're doing, just being being teenagers. And the boyfriend essentially is like, lock the doors. And she's like, what are you doing? And it doesn't show it, but it's totally implied that he's going to just let everybody there do their thing with Emma. So that's obviously horrible. Well, next we're shown the adult Emma. She is in the backseat of a car, but it's a cab, and she is going out to what is going to be this rental. Now, her phone keeps going off in this car ride, and these initials come up. The first letter is R. I don't remember the second one right now. So this will become prevalent later on, though, so just keep that in mind. Now, the cab driver's talking to her, and he's basically being creepy, because he's like, what are you doing out here? And she's telling him, and she acts kind of a little bit broken, like you can tell there's something going on with her. And he's just asking all these questions that, to me, if I was in an Uber or a taxi cab and somebody was asking me that stuff, I would be like, this is none of your business. But especially if you were a woman alone going somewhere by yourself in the middle of nowhere, it's like, oh my God, this is so inappropriate. Clearly they are trying to plant the seed of maybe it's going to be the cab driver guy. But he establishes that she's going out here, her husband's going to meet her the next day, and she's going to be by herself. So it already puts you on edge a little bit with that. So Emma gets dropped off at this house. Now it has like a security gate that you go into. This house is, like I said, very modern. It has like a state-of-the-art security system and a smart home. Alexa is like, old school. I mean, this is like Bill Gates' damn house type thing, okay? That will be prevalent later. So she's making herself at home. She's like, oh, here we go. I'm going to take a swim. I'm going to have some wine, so on and so forth. Now, again, her phone is still doing this whole thing where you're like, is that your husband calling? Because we know we're expecting him. And it's like, why are you answering the phone? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't you answering? Like, what's up with her? Like, you already know there's something shady going on. Now, later on in the evening, it will turn out that her husband shows up early. And, he's just like, well, I thought I'd get down here a little bit early. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. So here this goes. And so they're having an evening. They're outside doing the whole little, sitting by the fire, having some wine and drinks and doing all that. And having a nice little evening. Now, at one point, like, the husband tries to make a move or something. And she's kind of like, it's too cold up in here. And you can tell, this is when you're telling, like, there's something going on with their marriage. Like, all is not as it seems. And also we know from, the movie thing that it says they're trying to fix their relationship. So this is the signs of this starting to happen. So they end up having a drink, and this is when they start to act like super tired. And this is your first thoughts of it. They're acting like they were drugged. And so they go to sleep, and Emma has this dream of like this masked dude coming in and like undressing her or something. And so she gets to the next day. Well, she is in a different nightgown. It's like it's like more conservative. It's not as, flowy, if you will. And she's kind of coming to, and she's like, I didn't, put these clothes on. And apparently there's like roses that, she thinks the husband did, but we'll learn later that he didn't give these roses. So it's like, oh my God. But she gets him up. They realize our car keys are gone. Our phones are gone. I'm wearing different clothes. Like, what in the hell? So now they're going around, and they realize like, okay, like, this house has cameras in it, and they're realizing like something's off. And then they get a phone call, and this voice is basically like, look, you're not going to leave the home. You can't leave. And you're going to do everything that I say. Now, at this point, the house gets locked down. Like, these things come down and close the windows. I mean, it is like a fortress, and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then this voice, I call it the all-knowing entity. The voice is like talking to them. And this is when you really realize, okay, this whole house is rigged. Microphones, cameras, you name it, like, all eyes on them. Now, at this point, the wife's like, oh, hell no. Okay, she's like, Ma's going home. Okay. So she tries to run, and then she's, like, paralyzed by, like, the shrieking feedback sound. Well, they learn that they have had these, like, little devices, like, implanted in their skin, and the person can control it, and it basically emits this noise or whatever that's like, so this voice is basically telling them that they have to obey the voice and all this stuff, and it starts telling them things to do, and this is where you're kind of like, okay, what am I watching? Because the thing that the voice is telling them to do is almost like stereotypical gender roles, along with, stereotypical marital roles. So it's like, go in the kitchen and cook your husband food after his long day at work. And like when they start to walk at one point into the bedroom later, the voice is like, stop. You must open the door for your wife. That type stuff. And you're kind of like, okay, this is completely creepy. So now when they go in the kitchen and the voice is like, cook your husband dinner. And I mean, it's like telling her down to the T how to do this. And the voice is telling the husband to go get the laptop and turn it on, open these things up, go to this file. And so the husband does this. Well, he ends up seeing a video of his wife with the dude she's having an affair with. And you're like, oh my God. You know, and so you're like, okay, so this is where this is going. And so of course she's like, I'm sorry, it's over with. And he's like, how could you do this? How could you do this, Stella? So she keeps telling him it's over, all this stuff. So then they have to like eat dinner with each other. And they keep like, when I say argue, there's also this vibe of, well, we don't want to say something wrong because we might get shocked. And so they're trying to have this thing while the voice is like, you must be nice to your wife. You must say this to your husband. I mean, it's messed up. Because imagine if you found out your partner was cheating and then this voice being like, make them dinner. You know, you'd be like, oh, hell no. Well, it gets worse. So this is when the voice is like, you're going to go to the bedroom. And when they start to go there, this is the part I was saying earlier where the voice is like, stop. The husband must open the door for the wife. And then he's like, Miss Barrett, smile at your husband. And she's like, so then they go in the bedroom and y'all, oh my God, the voice is like tells him to make love to his wife. And it doesn't leave it at that. It gets very descriptive. And it's like telling him what to do and to kiss her and do all this stuff. And you're like, at first I was like this. I was like, okay, this is that kind of movie now. I thought it was that kind of movie a minute ago, but now it's this kind of movie. This might be one of these like kind of snuff films that the directors get together and the horror film is like just, you know, an excuse for the snuff film, if you will. But luckily the husband's like, I can't do this. Not like this, Stella. So there's all that. So remember the creepy cab guy? Well, later on the cab guy comes back and he's like doing the video camera outside trying to, you know, get their attention because she left something in the car and he wants to drop it off. And they're like, oh my God, we can be saved. And they're banging on the door and stuff like that. Well, they get a flashlight and they're flashing it towards the dude. And so he's like, okay, well, I guess we're not there. Well, he sees this light because remember there's a gate. And he's like, oh, maybe they need help. And so he starts to scale the gate, the fence, whatever, to go over. And you're seeing from the couple's perspective that somebody comes and grabs him off of that and you're like, oh my God, not the friendly cab driver. So at this point you know it's not the cab driver and you know someone is on this property this close watching them, telling them what to do. So obviously that totally sucks. Now, so again, fast forward. Later on, they find this like crawl space, and she had kind of stumbled upon this earlier when she spilled some wine and she realized it was going into a place. And so there's this crawl space that's in the kitchen. They take this paneling down and they're like, oh my God, here we go. And so she crawls down in there and you're just like, oh my God, she is going to run into the person, whoever, whatever this is, stalking them. And so it's very nerve-wracking. Well, the husband's out, you know, not in there, and you see the figure, all of a sudden he's standing behind the husband, and then it's like, you know, he does whatever. So you're just like, oh my God, she almost got, you know, but obviously he's gonna get her too, the whole 9 yards. And so now let's jump a little bit forward. They come to, and when they come to, there is a guy strapped to a chair in the house with them. And who might this be, you wonder? Well, I'll tell you. It's Ryan, the guy she's having an affair with. Now, remember how I said the phone calls kept going and text messages or whatever, and the first initial was R? So that was Ryan trying to get up with her. And so you're trying to put this together where it's like, well, hold on, girl. When you were cooking your man dinner, you said it's over with. That hoe didn't mean nothing. But now I see he's still blowing your phone up. So let's get the voice on the damn camera again. We need some damn answers up in here, is where I was at with this point. So now this is where literally, y'all, this movie starts serving some major Saw vibes. I'm like, oh my God. So basically Ryan comes to. Now he's like, what happened? Where am I? You know, type thing. So obviously everybody knows what's going on. What will end up happening is the voice will come over and give Emma a choice. And the voice is like, you have to kill Ryan or I'm going to kill your husband. Who means more to you? And you're like, oh my God, this is, if you've seen Saw, you already know, this is like a total thing from that. And of course she's like, I don't know what to do. Ryan's so hot, but my husband is too. You know, I have history with my husband, but damn, Ryan was good. You know, she's going back and forth. And you know, the husband, the voice is making that thing, that transmitter go off on the husband. And so he's like, honey, just, you know. And so eventually she's like, I'm sorry, Ryan. I'll never forget you. Bye. So now after all this, so she kills Ryan. I mean, this is clearly horrible. So a couple of things. So they end up, her and Henry, the husband, you know, they end up going back towards the bedroom, into the bedroom. And during this part, you're kind of like, why haven't we heard from the voice that much? You know what I mean? Like, there's this whole thing where you're like, well, we just went through this, but then radio silence a little bit on there. So the husband and her are in there and all this stuff, and the husband's kind of like, at one point, I'm going to go clean this mess up. You know, I'm going to go do that. And she basically is given this drink. And everything kind of comes to her where she's like, wait a minute. And she, in her memory, I guess, is like, wait a minute, the drink is what's knocking us out. And so she is like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So she's sitting in a certain position to where the camera can't see her. So she pretends to drink it, and then she pours it out under the bedside table. And then she like lays down. Well, at a certain point, she's kind of like, okay, like, you know, coast is clear, whatever. She gets up, kind of going to look for her husband. And she finds this secret room in the house. It's like the control panel, if you will, of the house. And it's very obvious that, oh my God, this is where the person that's controlling the house has been sitting. And you can see all the cameras. And this is when she realized like her husband's like outside or something like that. So obviously you have tons of questions about this. So she's looking around in this room, and all the evidence of what's been going on is in there. But a huge thing is she finds this file, this video, this like, you know, infomercial, if you will. And it's for the Edith firm. Now the Edith firm is the firm that is basically putting this weekend on. And so what you learn from this is that this is a firm that goes in to help husbands, you know, I'm going to say, you know, reel their women in type situation. Now we'll see like footage of these couples, like testimonials, and the women are always kind of like, yeah, we're happy. You can see this fear and all this type of stuff. Everything starts coming together here where the realization is what this firm does is they create these weekends at this house. The husband goes there. The wife does not know, but the husband knows. And the entire thing is set up to where the wife will kill the guy she's having an affair with, and they will have it on video, and it's her doing it. And this is ammunition for the husband to hold over her head. I would also imagine that the shocker thing is typically left in them so that the husband can like shock her or whatever. But that's here nor there at this point. So this is going on. So then she's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, she realizes like, this is bad. So she goes back, she pretends to be asleep, and the husband comes back in, and he's talking to the dude, like the dude who's the all-knowing voice. And they take her, they throw her in the back of the truck, the outside. And so she's sitting there. So she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So she is going to then be like, well, F this, my ass is gone. And so she starts to do all this. Well, the husband comes back. So she wants to make a run for it. Now she will end up like physically removing this thing from her neck. The little buzzer thing. And so fast forward a little bit, the husband comes back, and there's this whole game of each of them pretending like they don't know something, even though they both know it. And so she has the controller. She's telling the husband, okay, we have to go. And he's like, well, we have to go in and get this. And there's this whole vibe there. And she's like, well, let's go back in real quick. And da-da-da-da-da. And so on the way when they get in there, she squeezes the thing, and then she realizes, oh my God, he took the thing out of his head too. So he no longer has that. There's this whole struggle back and forth, yada yada. She ends up grabbing the little stun gun thing that has the buzzer thing in it and inserting another one into him and turning it high voltage and frying his ass to the ground. Now she does end up getting away, and she drives away, and down the road she finds the cab driver in a wrecked car. I don't know if he really wrecked. This is some of the little weird things that you're like, okay, I thought he was killed earlier, but I guess we didn't see it, so there's that. And so she finds him, she lets him in the back of the seat of the car, and she drives away, and it's like this full circle thing. So that is the general story to this whole thing. Now again, I kind of skipped over some parts if you do want to watch this. This was not a total spoiler alert that we just went over, but I mean, I told you the main parts of it. But there's still some surprises here and there in that if you do want to go back and watch it. Now let's talk about some of my final thoughts on this. This movie overall has definite like empowerment, themes running through it. It feels like some of the stuff is very forced, and it probably could have been a little bit more nuanced and not so in your face, but it also wasn't so bad that it was like, this is like 80s, you know, B-grade horror film type stuff here. Again, it's more of a thriller. There's not that much blood in it. It makes you think. There's some parts that make you jump a little bit, but it's not a scary movie in that sense. Now, here's how I kind of sum it up. I'm like, would I pay money to go see it at the movie theater? Absolutely not. Did I pay $4 to watch it at home? Yeah. Did I feel like that $4 kept me entertained for a couple hours? Yeah. Was I glad that I spent the $4? Yeah. That's pretty much it. This movie you'll think about it some, but it's nothing to write a dissertation over. It's nothing to get too deep in. I would venture to say that Saw franchise has more nuances to it than this movie did. Again, at times it feels like this movie is trying to force a lesson onto you. And while I think some of the things that it's saying are obviously important and obviously somebody's story, it just feels a little bit forced and maybe like it needed to be vetted out a little bit more. But again, I would highly suggest watching it. And like I said, if you haven't already, if you just listened to my review and you're like, I think I want to watch it. Again, I didn't put all the parts in that little story time that I just did. So you can definitely go back and watch it. Yeah, you will know some of the big twists and turns in it. But even then, it's visually interesting. It's an interesting film. And for this COVID time where they haven't been putting that much stuff out, it was definitely $4 worth well spent. Now, that's it. I appreciate you watching. If you want to see more of my reviews, check that out. If you're into true crime, be sure to check out my other channel, Reporting Live from My Sofa. I'll put the link in the description. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on my next movie binge.